Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Captive Audience. It's Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock, would that be Mountain Time, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Welcome aboard. Glad you all are here. My partner, Leslie Snyder, appears to be delayed. Hopefully, she'll make it. It's always a lot more fun and more entertaining when Leslie's here. But for now, you all are going to have to deal with me solo. Oh, I just got a text with her and she is trying to log on right now, she says. So while she's logging on, I will begin with uh, with the opening rant. And with the opening rant, I'm going to start out talking about the economy. So one of the things, and I just put in the chat post there some information about the economy. S&P 500 closed lower as AI weighs fears on financial stocks. Dow hits another record. So the Dow, if you're paying attention, went over 50,000 for the first time ever. But more important than that, even because I don't know that the stock market necessarily is reflective of a great economy. But what definitely is reflective of a great economy is the growth rate in terms of GDP or gross domestic product. It grew at an annualized 4.4% in the third quarter. That's the strongest pace it's had in the last 2 years. And that's an acceleration from the already brisk 3.8% it showed in the second quarter. By the way, 3% is considered very good, 4% is blowing up. And they're anticipating that it could be up in the 5% range by the time they have the next quarterly report. So the economy is doing absolutely outstanding. And it's doing this. I think this is the thing that makes this whole thing hysterical is doing this in spite of all of the predictions from the so-called experts from a few months ago. Now, you all recall all of the information from the experts was that the economy was going to go in the toilet due to the rebates, that Trump was dealing with in terms of getting our foreign partners to behave. Tariffs, I take it back, due to the tariffs that were being imposed. So the economy was supposed to go in the toilet. And once again, they were proven wrong. And what's behind those growth numbers is the phenomenal amount of investment has come back into the United States. So just to give you a list of some of those, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta all together poured an estimated $320 billion into AI infrastructure in 2025 alone. That's more than the entire gross domestic product for a lot of countries. Hyundai committed $21 billion from between 2025 to 2028, including a $5.8 billion steel plant in Louisiana. Stellantis, and I think Stellantis is the old Chrysler merged with Fiat. They announced a $13 billion four-year plan in the United States, the largest in its 100-year history. They're going to extend production in plants in Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And guess what those states are? Those are states that we call swing states. So great news there. General Motors announced $4 billion in domestic plant upgrades. Toyota has committed $10 billion over 5 years, with $912 million spread across 5 states. And Honda has shifted its next generation Civic production from Mexico to Indiana, again, back in the Midwest. The steel sector has surged, which has been going south for a long time. We got to make stuff at home, and stuff's made out of steel. And it's great to see the United States going back into steel production. Steel production surged in 2025 after the Trump administration doubled down on the steel tariffs that went from 25% to 50% last June. Domestic production of steel has risen 5% year over year, and about $20 billion in steel plant expansions are now underway. It really has been an incredible run, and this man's only been in office, 13 months? Absolutely unbelievable. Private sector companies have announced $1.5 trillion in new U.S. manufacturing investments, doubling the $750 billion generated by Biden. So bottom line, make industrial America great again, build stuff at home again, employ America's youth again. I'm absolutely loving it. We are on an historic trend. Let me see here. I think we have, let's see, I think we have a guest here. I think I have my partner. Yes, she's arrived, looking all young and hip. What's up, Leslie?
It is raining cats and dogs here in Southern California, so
Wow.
I've been sweatshirted and hatted up all day. So.
Well, that is the exact opposite. So it's been sunny and 35 degrees, but it's sunny. I think it got up to 45. It is a blazing 45 degrees. People running around in shorts up here, I'm telling you. Well,
That's
you'll
just so
get over
crazy.
your 1 week of rain down there.
I know, I know, I know. I don't feel sorry for me either, honestly.
Yes.
But wow, I was like taking notes on your rant. I mean, incredible what's been going on in this country.
Yeah. And to see it happen so fast. I mean, and what makes me laugh is all these so-called pundits and experts. And the thing is, these people know better. There's no way that they could be dumb enough to think that if you raise tariffs someplace else, that they wouldn't shift their production here. Just like when they had tariffs against us over there, then our companies went there. This is not rocket science. You don't have to have a PhD in economics to understand this. It's pure incentives. Of course, they would come back.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's a political motive behind why they'd be saying those things.
Well, so this is reminding me of a conversation I had last weekend with a friend who's Brazilian. She's proudly also an American citizen. Her husband is from New Zealand. And so they have very different economies, very different social structures and opportunities that we do here in America. And the reason why she left Brazil was because although she came from a family of means, she recognized that there just wasn't opportunity across the board. And she just wanted something different for her family. And her husband came to America. But there's just been sort of this like general recognition that in New Zealand, because of the socialist structure, because they tax so high, they have free college, they have free medical, they care for their elderly in a way that we don't. And now, of course, New Zealand, what's the population of New Zealand? It's like the population of like Vista, California, where I live, right? I mean, it's like, right. It's like, it's super small. So the level of mismanagement and corruption that can happen in an economy like in New Zealand is nowhere near what could happen in California or the United States, right? But I was texting with her over the weekend and mentioned to her that the Trump RX plan had when did Trump RX launch? Was it last Friday?
It's only been like a week or two.
Yeah. And I said, she had been talking, we had dinner over the weekend, and she had been talking to me about how the cost of her father's chemotherapy medication was somewhere around $15,000 a month if she had to purchase it here, but it was free in Brazil. And I said, Trump RX and his whole rejiggering of our pharmaceutical pricing structure, it means that pharmaceutical manufacturers are going to have to raise the prices on other countries. There was an article about, the Swiss government was reacting to the price increase that they were facing because Pfizer, just as one single, biotech, is having to compensate for the lower prices that they're now charging Americans. They're going to have to go out to the other countries and make up that revenue loss, right? And Switzerland's already encountering that. They're raising prices. They're eliminating some drugs from their from the available drug menu. And so all these countries that have been sort of held up as examples of amazing socialist structures, right? All the Scandinavian countries, Switzerland, these people have amazing social nets. Well, that's going to start going away.
Well,
as America is calling things out and saying we're no longer going to subsidize, they're going to start having to pay for things for their own people. Things won't be available.
Everything you're saying is great. I mean, it's so awesome because I saw this way back when I was in the pharmaceutical industry 30 years ago. Basically, Americans are subsidizing their socialist system. So we're not talking about how wonderful the system is. The system only works because we subsidize it. So Americans are taxed so they can have their lattes and their free healthcare. That's what's going on. Who's been paying for the defense for the last 80 years? The United States has been paying for the defense. Who do you think is developing all of the medical care and all of the medical devices and all the pharmaceuticals? Who's developing that? Commie economies don't develop new stuff. free market economies are the ones that develop this stuff. The medicine and the inventions and the internet and all of this technology ain't coming from them. They'd be living in the safari or something. It was just up to them because there's nothing coming without even looking. I wonder how many Nobel Prizes have come out of like New Zealand in the last like 80 years. How many like inventions have come out of New Zealand? How many new drugs are manufactured and created in places like that? None of it. They all come from countries like the United States. So they're moochers basically. And it's so great to have to see them. You want to mooch and pay your own freight, and let's see how you like it then.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, but I think it's very interesting because, Switzerland is a major pharma giant. They have Roche, they have Novartis. I mean, they're definitely a powerhouse when it comes to pharma, but their prices back at home are being impacted because the United States is no longer going to subsidize. And so I just think that's going to start reverberating, and all of these socialist systems that, the democratic socialists have been holding up. Bernie Sanders has been holding up AOC, saying, well, look at these amazing cultures and how they take care of their people. Well, turns out they've been little spoiled little babies, trust fund babies, getting an allowance from Daddy US.
That's exactly right. Well, where do they make their money? They make 80 or 90% of their sales come from the United States. So that's who's generating their revenue, so they can do their research and development, turn around and mooch off us and give free stuff for their own countries. I'm just like thrilled that there's finally a president that's come along and recognized this. I mean, I think the average American is kind of getting sick of paying $300 a month for a drug. And if you go across the border to Canada or Mexico, or you go overseas, you find that same drug is like $10. It's just awesome that he's put a stop to that.
Yeah.
So it's all good. It's all great stuff. But one other thing I had to bring up, and I was looking at this, I call it Cali Stupid, right? Instead of California, Cali Stupid. I don't know if you saw that. Sorry, I know you live there, but it's rough.
No,
you're victimized by him. But that clown governor of yours, so they're threatening to tax billionaires, increase 5% tax of billionaires, and they're leaving in droves. So I guess Zuckerberg is the latest one, just moved to Florida and bought like a $200 million mansion or something in Florida, right? How much tax revenue just left the state? I mean, they're saying California's taxable billionaire wealth went from 2 trillion to 1 in a matter of a couple of weeks. Half. I mean, half. Just run them out of the state. How stupid is that? You can't make it up.
Well, Carl DeMaio is a big is a big voice in California. He's a Republican. He's and he is not afraid to poke people in the eye. And he's been really pushing. Apparently, so you've got the billionaire tax, which you're just talking about, but there's also this middle class tax that apparently is being pushed, where they want to start taxing savings accounts, checking accounts, home equity. Home equity. Yeah. They wanted to retirement accounts, and it's as you know, it's based on the current value. Well, the current value of your home has no bearing upon your income. Your investment, your retirement account has no bearing upon your income. You can't go out and spend money on a trip around the world because you had a retirement account of such and such I mean, you have to then draw down on that stuff, which reduces the value of that. Like it's not cash in the bank. So they're trying to figure out a way that they can tax because they've mismanaged our funds so much. They're trying to figure out how they can tax middle Americans.
Well, the objective, you never forget this, the long-term objective is to destroy society, to destroy the free market economy, to destroy the Judeo-Christian culture, to destroy the constitutional republic. They're trying to destroy all of that. Now, little minions and little idiots running around in the streets, they don't get that, but that's the objective, and this is how you do it. One of the things that's made the United States such an amazing place is it's always had an incredible middle class. One of the reasons why communists were never able to tear the United States down in the past, because this country always had a sensational middle class. The only places where communists have been able to be successful is where the middle class has been destroyed. I mean, that's what happened in Nazi Germany in the 30s. They destroyed the middle class. You've heard the stories about literally taking 1 billion marks, pulling up in a wheelbarrow just to buy like a loaf of bread. They did the same thing in Russia, destroyed the economy, killed all the young in a stupid war, and then that created the situation. We have conditions ripe for communism because you have no middle class. When the French Revolution occurred, it was the same sort of a thing. They got themselves in such bad debt that people were literally on the brink of starvation, spending a fortune, by the way, fighting Britain on U.S. soil. Thank you, France. We appreciate it. But you destroyed your own country by doing that. And that's how they wound up with the French Revolution and everybody losing their head to Monsieur Guillotine. So that's how these things roll. And the elites at the top of the food chain know that. The objective is worse than just bringing communism. It is to destroy the country so they could create something different. And the states on the West Coast, particularly California, because it's the biggest prize, that's why they're doing what they do. There's no other explanation.
Yeah.
There's not that stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you want to talk about destruction. So about a year ago, there was an
Oops. I think we lost her. She'll probably be back in just a moment. But while we're waiting for her to come back, Carol, I just wanted to say thank you for your chat, saying that you were able to listen to my Dad Rants notes. I appreciate it. I'm starting to convert those into podcasts as well. So for those of you who have not heard them, feel free to jump in. I rant on those as well. But while we're waiting for my partner Leslie to come back in, I'm sure she'll be back in a moment. I'll talk just a minute about the murder of the Washington Post, is what they're calling it. Now, you all know the Washington Post has been a left-wing rag for a long, long time. I can't remember the name of the famous editor who, when Reagan won in the election, she literally said, I remember Reagan won 49 out of 50 states, and she couldn't believe Reagan won because she said, quote, and I quote, "I don't know a single person who voted for Reagan. How could you live in such a bubble that a president can win in a landslide, 49 out of 50 states, and you don't know a single person who voted for the other party?" That's the kind of bubble these people live in. So I couldn't have been more thrilled to hear that the Washington Post is undergoing massive layoffs. This is awesome. So they laid off, I think, 600, they're down to about 600 employees over the course of the year. They lost $100 million, like $100 million per year, not $100 million total, $100 million every year for the last several years. And so finally, they're starting to have these layoffs. And this is the best thing about it. They laid off 13 climate reporters. Does it get any better than that? The biggest liars and hoaxers of them all, they laid off a bunch of those guys. So my heart couldn't feel better about another left-wing rag either going out of business, number one, or number two, being forced to actually report the news. And you know how hard it is on them to actually report news. So I thought that was a really cool thing to see happen. And while we're waiting for Leslie to come back, I thought I had another story here that I just had to run by you. And how much Minnesota fraud can there be? You can never get enough of learning about Minnesota fraud. And I don't have the time inclination. I mean, my head swims thinking about the details of how these people have been hosing the country. But just take this. Ilhan Ommar's husband ran an investment firm that racked up $30 million in sales. Now get your head around this. No industry experience, no industry background. And this guy generates a company that makes $30 million. Unbelievable. And she owned a winery, by the way. But isn't that against her religion to be drinking wine? That website, of course, suddenly disappeared. And then there was the whole thing you saw in public where she was attacked, so-called attacked in public, where somebody ran in the room and sprayed her. And initially, when I looked at that, I thought, that seems a little weird that someone would have that easy access to her, be able to run up right to her and spray her in the face and then kind of get semi-tackled. If you were going to do something like that, wouldn't you try to attack her with something more lethal? Or wouldn't you have tried to just bum rush her and tackle her yourself? Well, clearly this whole thing was a fake maneuver is what it's turning out to be. And he probably was on her staff and that was the whole thing was set up. But in any case, Leslie, you're back. I was just monologuing, which I am wont to do. So I know you're about to start chatting on something. So let me turn it back over to you.
I have no idea where I was cut out. So you missed all of that?
Well, having said that, then let's tell you what I was just talking about a moment ago, and that was the fake spraying of Ilhan Omar. I know you had
Oh,
your own thoughts on that.
well, I mean, I don't give her a lot of thought. I think, everything about her
He
is
doesn't have
fake.
a lot of
So,
thought either, but that's another.
yeah. But yeah, no, I was talking about my own state.
Then carry on. Tell us
Okay.
more about
Okay.
California.
So yeah, exactly. Taxifornia. Yeah. Lunafornia. So Gavin Newsom has already been found out to have been mismanaged at least $24 million in homeless spending. It's been a year. You know, there's $24 million missing, unaccounted for in the homeless support fund. He has no explanation for where this money went. And Nick Shirley, that young kid that was like really exposing all the Minnesota stuff going on with the daycare
Yes.
centers and okay.
Mhm.
So Nick Shirley's been out in California and he's been turning over rocks. And he and another gentleman, Spencer Pratt, have been kind of like going back and forth. Spencer Pratt is kind of a minor celebrity whose house burned down during the LA fires, and it totally activated him. And so he's been just gunning for Newsom and Karen Bass and everybody who's affiliated with all the corruption in the LA area. He's also running for mayor now. But he just turned over. He was talking about a gentleman, Spencer Taylor. I say gentleman because that's my default, but I'm just going to say some loser named Spencer Taylor, who he buys and flips properties, and he's figured out that the government funding source is very lucrative. So he bought a house for $11 million that he told the bank that he was going to be living in and refabbing. And instead, 3 days later, he sold it for $27 million to a nonprofit owned by a Democratic senator in California who has a nonprofit who then used money from the state of California that was supposed to be dedicated to homeless support. And they're now supposedly turning this into a homeless system. So $16 million. And Karen Bass apparently picked up the phone and actually facilitated the deal.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's just so many fireworks happening in California. And I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it to result in handcuffs for Gavin Newsom.
These
I want
guys
the block. I want it, Don.
They are so bad. You think of all of the famous American scandals, whether it's Watergate, Tammany Hall, Teapot Dome, none of them come close to what these guys are doing. I mean, and that's just California. We already know what's going on in Minnesota. Who knows what other states have got this stuff going on? I'm sure there's plenty of it. It's just, it's mind-boggling how criminal they've become.
Well, I mean, it's like, I love that we're peeling back the curtain. I mean, there is nothing new under the sun, right, Don? Like, we know this.
Yes, right. Yes.
Okay? There's nothing new under the sun. Now we just see it. We see it. People probably more than ever. Well, maybe not more than ever. I don't know, but it seems like more than in recent history have been stepping into corruption because it's almost like the path of least resistance. There's so much opportunity for just stealing and wasting taxpayer funds. There's been no resistance to it.
Well, I think what's changed is the technology is what's changed. I mean, you might go back and say, well, name your murderous Roman dictator from that time period. Well, they can only murder so many people because only so many heads you can chop off with a sword. You move forward to the Hitler era, and now you got machine guns. Well, you can be a lot more efficient with machine guns than you can with swords. And the same thing is true with the technology. Now we have the technology to be 100 times more nefarious than they might have been 1,000 years ago. The same evil emperor from like 1000 AD may have had the same level of evil as, say, Chairman Mao, but they didn't have the capacity to wipe out 40 million people because A, they didn't have 40 million people in their borders, and B, they didn't have the technology to do it. So, yeah, I'd agree with you. It is just absolutely crazy to be living in this time period, though. And we all knew it was shady, but who would have thought it would have been this shady?
Well, because there's just been nothing to stop it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, I mean, I'm sure that you can look back on your time in Big Pharma. I can certainly look at my time, working with government funded projects, and talking to the people who are running the programs and the kinds of ROI, the metrics that they're reporting out and the success measures, that it's like private industry can't report that. Like shareholders won't take that as a success measure. But when it comes to government funding, you're just allowed to, sort of get close, and maybe we need to study it more. And, we saw an indicator of this, so now we're going to do this. I mean, it's just, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I really do believe this. So at the end of the day, the most important thing in the country is its culture. And its culture, and I'm probably repeating, you heard this before, the culture is driven by the religion, because the culture is a set of rules, which we'll live by. What sets the rules? Generally speaking, the rules are set in this country by Christianity. So the degree that we adhere to that will be the degree that which we do things better. And if you reflect on, say, 40 or 50 years ago, a lot of these things weren't happening then because you have more people willing to adhere to the moral code than you do now. I mean, for example, could you have possibly imagined 40 or 50 years ago when all the protests were going on, nobody was kicking down a church. Nobody was getting in a priest or a pastor's face. There were limits to what you would do. Nobody was talking about, engaging in inappropriate activity in public with like young children, or changing their genders behind their backs, or not telling their parents they were doing those things. Those things never would have happened 40 or 50 years ago, but they're happening now. And the reason they're happening now is because the culture has gone downhill from what was around 40 or 50 years ago. So I think that pretty much every problem that we have can be directly tied to our slide away from the moral code. Now, I don't know how much of that you were able to hear because you went in and came back out, but I was just talking about how we don't have the same moral character, especially in our leadership class, that we did 40, 50 years ago. One last indicator of that. I remember being at the University of Oregon campus when who was running for office? Let's see, Bush, I think. No, Reagan was running for office. Vice President Bush came on campus, and Ted Kennedy came to run as well. And I remember being very clear from pretty much any pundit who would talk about it, and I'm only like 19 years old at the time, there was no way Ted Kennedy could win. Why? Because of Chappaquiddick. There's just no way. He can run until the cows come home, but nobody's going to be president having done what he did. Even if, whether you believe he did it or not, he was affiliated with that. Ain't no way that guy's winning president. Same thing. There was a senator out of Colorado, Senator Hart. I don't know if you remember him. Hart was the guy who the press was saying he was like a skirt chaser. And he pretty much dared him, saying, no, I don't do that. And then he had a boat that had a name on it. I can't remember the name of the boat. It was something provocative. And he was seen with a lady who, other than his wife, on this boat. That was the end of his career. That was like the mid 80s. That would not matter one whit now. So that tells you how much we've slid. Now, we could have President Clinton, and I don't have to go through the sordid details associated with that. How could any of us forget who lived through it? And I remember when it was happening thinking, oh man, that guy's no way going to get reelected. And he got reelected anyway. So I rest my case. And that same moral decline is showing up everywhere else. I mean, doctors 40, 50 years ago never would have supported the things you see them supporting now. They never would have supported chopping up kids behind their parents' back, or encouraging that kids get chopped up, or forcing people to get jabs on things that weren't even studied. That class or post-birth abortions. I'm not even talking about the last 3 months. I'm talking like after they're born. There would have been zero support for that sort of thing 40 or 50 years ago. That's because we walked away from our foundational principles.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. when I'm in conversations with people and they're justifying things, they're living their life in certain ways, and then all of a sudden you go, "Oh, you're not a Christian. That makes sense now." Right?
Yeah.
Things that are not ambiguous and I.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Yeah. And you figure there's only a society can only stand so much of that. I mean, obviously, our society is never imperfect. I don't need to mean to imply that. But what I am implying is that you can only have a certain percentage of people doing that. I'm not sure what that number is, by the way, but here's just a great example of that. The We know the fertility rate, the replacement rate is what 2.1. So if enough people decide to like just stop having kids, right? So if you're at 1.5, eventually your nation cannot exist anymore. There's things that if everyone and here's another great way to look at these things. If everybody decided to be gay, where would the country be in 2 generations? Well, you wouldn't have any country, right? So that tells you right there that it's disordered to do those things. If you spend
right.
more than yeah, if you
Yeah.
spend more than you have all the time, what happens? Eventually, it collapses. Um, so these are just basic fundamentals.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah,
So,
it's an
well,
but
you start talking about disorder and corruption, and then that, of course, we can't let go of Epstein, and that other
oh,
dump that happened, just a couple days ago.
oh, I have to rub my eyes. I have to rub my temples. I will say, I don't know this. Okay, I'll just say it. You tell me what you think. This is something I read someplace. Hey, look, we're not. Well, I'll just. So, did you hear this whole thing with? And this might be old news. So apparently, Gates was cheating on his wife, and in order to, and then he caught some STD, and then apparently gave it to tried to give it to his wife in order to keep her from finding out. He tries to surreptitiously get her like a shot, right?
No,
So,
he tried to get her something that he could drop in her drink so that
oh,
she
okay.
wouldn't know.
So some kind of an antibiotic or something, right? All right.
Yeah.
So look,
Yeah.
this is how can I say this? Let's set aside the ethics of that for a moment. Is that the most juvenile grade school solution you've ever heard of? This is something a 12-year-old would think of. I'm gonna slip her a Mickey. Maybe she'll never find out. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I
I
mean, she's an
just
adult woman who knows about her body. And if things start like itching and falling off.
plus there's this. Any guy who's been married for any number of years have enough common sense to figure this out. Your women are way more intuitive than we are. They know. You might think you're pulling the wool over, but dude, you ain't pulling nothing over. If your woman has an IQ above 50, she knows when you've been cheating. Now, she might like be trying to fool herself and pretend like she doesn't know, but she knows. And how can a guy be that smart, do something that stupid? Just fess up. Pay the 50 billion or whatever it is, just fess up.
Well, I mean, he and Bill and Melinda, are separated, and
Right.
she's not talking about anything. And
Yeah.
that's only because, I mean, because she's got a lot to lose if she does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's all sorts of weirdness going on. I'm just really disappointed that we are not going to watch the Clinton deposition live. I'm disappointed that I have to watch the replay afterwards, and what's like the transcript and the video afterwards.
Hello? If you all can hear me, let me know. Okay, I think we're back online here. Hello, we're back.
Did we both leave, or was it just me?
No, we both went out that time, so
Oh my
it
gosh.
must have been something we said.
It was Epstein. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Big Brother did not like that.
Dang. Okay, so where do we go out? I guess what I left with was I'm just
Yeah,
disappointed that we don't get to watch the Clintons live.
right in the middle of go ahead.
I'm disappointed that I don't get to watch the Clintons live do their whole, testimony to Congress. Is it Congress or just the House? The House oversight, anyway, whatever, whoever it is, whatever
I think
body
it's
of
just
Congress
the
it
House.
is. I'm disappointed that we don't get to see that live. Okay,
You
yeah,
can imagine the
because I
deal
think
they
that
must
would
have
be.
cut. I wonder what was traded.
Well, but we still get the transcript and we get the rebroadcast, right? We just don't get the actual live performance.
We don't get the live. But people think about how people lost their minds when the whole Clarence Thomas thing was going down, right? Or when the OJ trial was going down. It would be that level of crazy over something like this. And just in
More.
time for the elections.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so I don't know if you read this. Okay, switching gears because I'm a little going down a rabbit hole. A friend of mine sent me an article today about Chicago,
Mhm.
some city, major city in Illinois. I thought it was Chicago. They are actually issuing checks for reparations. They are issuing $25,000 to 40-ish people who they've documented lived in the city during the time of slavery.
Wow. Wow. Well, they lived in the city during slavery?
Lived in the city during slavery in a northern state. They lived in the city during slavery. And so we must all assume that these people were horribly persecuted. Seriously, Don, you need to get in on that graft. You got
Well,
to
they
need.
must be they got to be 160 years old.
Well, it was their family. Exactly. It was their family. I'm sure there's something as a white woman that I have missed out on. I'm sure there's something. And you know what else? I'm not even 5'5". There's definitely systemic like heightism going on. I can tell you for sure. As a short woman, I have missed out on many opportunities in life. And you know
You
what else?
know,
I'm brunette. I'm not blonde. So think of everything that tall, skinny, blonde women have. Those bitches have everything. I need to go after some of that.
well, the race hustling, and I think I wrote about this about 2 or 3 years ago. So I was reading about Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington, clear back in like 1905 or 10, warned us about race hustlers. Can you imagine? I can't believe how prescient these guys were back then. But he said one of the biggest problems is going to be as things get equaled out and blacks raise themselves up from slavery. Up from slavery was the name of his book. He said one of the biggest things to watch out for, and he didn't call them race hustlers, but he had another name for them. And boy, has he turned out to be right. Because for a certain percentage of the population, that's how they make money, is they have to keep it going. And then there's another part of the population for whom they refuse to take self-responsibility for their actions. They want to make sure that they look at themselves and they say, I'm not successful. Rather than looking at what I could do better so I could be successful, they look at somebody else to blame for the lack of success. And in this case, and most of the time, they're going to use something like racism, sexism, ageism, you name the ism, they're going to use that. So until you've done everything you could possibly do in order to move yourself forward in the great game of life, you have no right to be asking somebody else to carry your water for you, particularly when you look at how much things have changed. I am always stunned at how much better things are now than they were, say, in like 1965, 1970. And I don't know if you remember that, right? it is, and for me in the Northwest, it was never really bad relative to what my parents had put up with. But the change is astonishing, and it blows my mind that people complain about racism. I'm just stunned. If you're looking for perfection, you're not going to get that until you get to heaven, if you get to heaven.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean,
the best place on earth, every place else in the world, by the way, no one ever says this, has horrible racism. I know blacks who went to like the countries in Africa and they treated them like dirt because they were Black American. I mean, so
in Africa,
it would help you if you go to the Middle East and you have dark skin in the Middle East. Oh, you're lower than the bottom of a shoe. These are the things that never get pointed out to people.
why would they be racist against Black people in Africa?
Why is anybody racist? Well, if you're in Northern Africa, you have a bunch of different skin shades there.
Okay.
And
Okay,
being
so
darker
it's
ain't good.
So it's a shadeism.
I guess you could say that.
Just like the lighter that you are, the lighter. Okay.
Oh, there was huge racism within blacks in the United States in terms of what shade of dark you were. I remember that growing up. They call you high yellow. That was like a term. And if you were light skinned, you caught more hell than if you were darker, you caught more hell than if you were lighter.
So do you think that that's universal around the world, that the lighter you are, the more favoritism you receive?
I don't have enough experience or knowledge to be able to make that claim, but I do know in large swaths of the world, being dark ain't a great thing for you. You look at countries, I'm sure that's true in Japan, for example. I'm sure it's true. I know it's true in China. I know it's true in North Africa. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I do know that in Asian cultures, they do prize lighter skin and they have a lot of bleaching solutions to maintain that lighter skin. So, and I think it's really funny because in the Caucasian culture, we of course want to be tan. We
Right.
admire people that have melanin in their skin. So
Yeah.
it's like it's that old adage of you want what you can't have or what you don't have. Blondes want to be brown, browns want to be blonde, reds want to, like everybody wants to be something that they're not. The grass is always greener.
Yeah, I gotta say, I have never understood racism. I just don't. And I'll give you this quick story from my childhood, which I think kind of sums it up. So I grew up in the neighborhood where all the families with kids were black. There were white people in the block, but they were all older. Like it was a bunch of Germans that immigrated into in that part of Portland, and their kids were older than us, and they weren't even around when I came. So they were all like grandparent types who were all really nice to us, right? But the rest of the neighborhood, so blacks had moved in from the World War II thing and the shipbuilding and all of that, and had moved up from the South. And so you had all these black families. There was a Japanese family down the street, Japanese family down the street, and there was a white kid next door. And other than that, it was all black. And so I got bussed out. And the school I got bussed out in the 6th grade was 100% white. I mean, it was me and this other black girl, and that was it. That was like a shock. But people were super friendly out there to us. I mean, I have nothing but great memories. Did I hear the occasional N-word or whatever? Of course. But I heard a lot more at my own school. Right. So, and I'll never forget, there was this gal, her name was Beth. And you're in fourth grade, we play handball against the wall, and we're playing handball. And she casually says to me, my grandfather said that, I shouldn't play with the N-word. And, you're like the 4th grade, you say, oh, we keep playing handball. Right. And that was it. It never came up again. And I've often thought about that moment, right? Like she didn't care. I didn't care. Right. Her grandfather had an issue. I'm not playing handball with him. I don't care what he thinks. And she could care less what he thinks. Right. If I ever get a chance to see her again, I would hug her because she just didn't care. And we just went and did what kids do. That's like a grown up people's stupid problem. And then there was like the time when some kid called me the N-word and I got mad. And then I said, well, I hate white people. And then rational, well, except for Johnny, he's cool. And Sam, he's cool. And Jim, he's cool. And he's cool. Maybe it was just that one idiot, right? So, but if an 8-year-old could figure that out, Why can't grown people figure it out? It's the character that counts, not the skin color. Um, and I think the majority of this country has got that. It's just there's people on the left who need that because they need that division so they can keep you on the dole, so they can keep you voting for them. And that's what the rest of us have to understand. And where true racism exists, to my mind, anymore, it's in blue cities. Pretty much that's it.
Yeah.
And probably blue zip codes to be even more specific, because I've been all over this country, right? And I've been in places where you're supposed to be afraid. I've ridden bike, and on a bicycle, you're vulnerable and you're just out there. So I've ridden bike in places like Fallbrook, California. You know anything about Fallbrook? That was where that KKK organization was. I can't think of the name now. They had a big KKK thing in Fallbrook, and I had no problems in Fallbrook. Riding in Montana in the middle of nowhere, guys going by with the Confederate flag. I wave at them, they wave at me. Right, no problem. Right. Southern Oregon, which used to be the biggest KKK outfit west of Mississippi, was in Medford, Oregon. A lot of people don't realize that. And the famous case where it was overturned, they tried to make it illegal for Catholics to have schools in the United States. When the Supreme Court, that was out of Medford, Oregon. And as my mother-in-law used to say, well, they went after the Catholics because they didn't have any blacks to go after. But it was like that back then. In fact, it was so bad growing up that when we would drive to California, everybody who was black knew you fill up your gas tank in Eugene and you didn't stop again until you got to Redding, because Southern Oregon was so racist. You may not even be able to get gas, right? That's all completely changed and forgotten. The people want to keep it going for their own purposes, but I'm sorry, it just doesn't exist in the vast majority of the country. Only in Democrat-run cities do we find racism.
I have a friend who has a house in Florida, and she well, I think in Florida, because that is deep South,
Mhm.
I think there is quite a bit of racism.
Mhm.
I think there's some shocking racism down there. But it's not going to prevent you from buying a house. It's not going to prevent you from getting a job. It's a societal sort of like bullshitty thing.
Mhm.
I don't know. I haven't personally encountered it, but but again, I mean, you can't regulate people's hearts. You can't make people be loving and open and tolerant and understanding. You can change the laws. That's all you can do. And then you can rely on God, you
And
know?
here's what I would say, and granted, this is kind of a nuanced thing, but let's say that there was a certain part of town where, and you see this more in the Northwest than you do, because it's like, let's face it, like 95% white up here, right? And I didn't want to move to this part of town because they, leave the toys all over the front yard, and there's a toilet bowl with a bunch of plants in it, and there's diapers all over the streets, and there's a junk car in the driveway, and it's up on blocks. And like a whole bunch of white people live there. I don't want to live around those kind of white people. Am I racist?
Mm.
I would suggest to you that I'm not racist. I don't want to be around people who live differently than I live. So, what happens, I think, a lot, and you take a look at a lot of these places in the South where people have those kinds of attitudes towards blacks. Well, if you look at how those blacks behave in some of those places, I'm talking Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, where the crime is like through the roof. You got 40 kids by 5 or 6 different fathers. Maybe they don't want to be around that. Now, they might be making the mistake of assuming that your race equals behavior, right?
Mhm.
And it does not. And that's the thing that we have to fight against. But it's definitely irrational. If you're in, and I've been to Tallahassee, for example, and when you drive from the airport, at least 25 years ago, when you drove from the airport, it wasn't a pretty sight from the airport to downtown Tallahassee in terms of what you saw. Um, and the behaviors of people who would live like that, yeah, I don't want to be around them. I'm black.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
not skin color, it's behavior. People will, you know, consider the two the same, and that is the mistake. And the media tries to do that because look at how they portray, and they have the audacity, by the way, to call it black culture. I'm here to tell you, it's not black culture to have your pants on backwards. It's not
Right.
black culture to have like a couple of nose bones through your ring and tattoos all over your head. and have 5 kids by babies all over. That's not Black culture. That's the Black underclass. And remember, if you go back to slavery, we have situations where when the Emancipation Proclamation happened, you had men who would leave the plantation and walk hundreds of miles trying to find the wife and family that they were separated from by the slave master. Fast forward to now, you got Joe Blow in the apartment tenement with 5 different kids all over town, kid next door. He won't even go over and visit them. What happened in 160 years that you have men that won't be men? There's been a destruction of the culture, a systematic destruction of the culture brought on by LBJ and the welfare state on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right that there's a destruction of the culture, and it's all the colors. It's the rainbow of colors. But the black culture has been targeted. I mean, I have heard stats about home ownership and entrepreneurship and education achievement of the Black community, right after emancipation, maybe the first 50 years after emancipation versus how it is now. And there were safe, beautiful, successful, self-sufficient communities of intact families, black families, that were all over the place across the country, and that's all been destroyed.
What we're seeing now is a new phenomenon based, and it's all changed since the LBJ, since the war on poverty, which I call the war on Negroes, is what it really was. I mean, again, I'll just snapshot in the neighborhood I grew up in. That neighborhood, I think I counted, there's around 60 kids in that neighborhood, right? Do you know, I did not know a single family without a father. Everybody had a father. You know the Black illegitimacy rate now is 80%. You can't hardly find anybody who does have a mother and father. Back then, everybody had a mother or father. And that hasn't been that long ago. That's that is a cataclysmic change. And what's worse is that now the white illegitimacy rate, which was about 5% in say 1960, now that's at 40%. So how much of that can a society take before it collapses? The foundational structure for developing a human being being torn apart in one generation. This is not something that we've had time to adjust for over 500 or 600 years. We're talking one generation.
Yeah.
And if you want to see what that looks like, you go to downtown Portland, you go to downtown Chicago, and you see them with the meth hangover, walking around bent over and can't get up, laying in the gutters, dying in the streets. That's what we're creating.
Well, and it definitely seems like there's this mentality that if you are from an intact family, if you have a father who's engaged and loves you and sticks around, that is a family of what's the word I'm looking for? Privilege. And that's the white culture. That's the white culture that does that stuff. And so if you aren't understanding or accommodating to a culture of broken families, and poverty and some sort of abuse, then you are not being tolerant and inclusive of the brown culture. And when I say brown, it's mostly the Black culture, because Mexicans stick together, Asians stick together, right? They're brown. It's Indians stick together. And so it's like you can't call out what is real, which is, hey, this is destructive behavior. You can't call that out, because now all of a sudden, because you're calling out the obvious and there's only one class of people that seems to fit that picture, you're racist.
Yeah. And see, the thing is that the left has been brilliant with that. They've weaponized Christian kindness against itself. So you feel unkind if you state this. However, I would submit to you that it's unkind not to say it. If you had a football team and your offensive line was out of shape and they all weighed 100 pounds overweight, and you're getting slaughtered every football game, is it more merciful to tell them that, hey, fellas, we got to get in shape so we can win these games, or we're going to keep losing, go 0-11, and nobody gets drafted, right?
Right.
What's the right thing to do? Well, the right thing to do is the difficult thing to do. And here's the problem with most human beings. We don't want to catch arrows. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to be liked. We all do. It's a natural human thing. But being liked at the price of doing right is too expensive, and it will eventually kill all of us. Think about the people who have had the most impact in history. Were they liked the whole time? We think the world of Abraham Lincoln right now, but you know what? They hated his guts back then. They hated him so much, in fact, that they assassinated them. I mean, right? You know, think about well, we'll think about Jesus. What happened to him? They assassinated him. That's what happens. What 11 of the 12 apostles got assassinated in the most horrific fashion. So if we don't man up, woman up enough to be able to take being called names, we're doomed, and we're just going
Yeah.
to have to take that hit. So no, I'm sorry. And even terms like broken homes are not even allowed to be used anymore. To your point,
Right.
because I'm afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. Sorry, you got to hurt your feelings. Offensive lineman, you a fat slob. We got to help you get in shape. That's hey, the right thing to do is to tell you the thing that's going to hurt and then help you to fix it. Having children out of wedlock by different men, that ain't right. You got to stop doing that. Let's help you get on your feet, but you can't sin no more, as the old biblical adage would say. But we got
Yeah.
to say things that are tough to say. You can't get better at anything in life without a struggle.
Right.
And this is no different. It's too important not to say it. And too many of us, and it's me, one last comment, then I'll be quiet. So many of us feel like we want to wait around for leaders to do it. We want to wait around for the pastor of our church to say it. We want to wait around for the politician to say it. But as this motivational speaker once said, and I can't remember his name now, but I quote: "If you want something, if you want something to get done, you need to go out there and do it. If you're waiting for something to get said, you need to be out there and go say it. If you want something to make happen, you need to go out there and make it happen. Stop waiting for other people to do the job that you need to be doing." And that's where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's,
you're right. I mean, this is a time when um, you know, we've kind of dodged a bullet in that, our First Amendment has been um restored in a way that was taken away quite a bit during COVID, and with this whole, uh, all the lies that have been going on about, Trump and um, just world affairs and who's right and who's wrong and science and all these things. But there's still quite a bit of risk for a lot of people to actually speak up and tell the truth. I mean, I can tell you as a professional, um, I mute myself because I have a conservative voice, and I have been canceled professionally,
mhm,
and I am aware that that could happen again.
mhm.
And so I will speak freely to the people around me, but I'm not going to go on social media and blast my
Sure.
thoughts. And and I admire the people that just step boldly
Mhm,
into into these things. I support them, but you know it's scary. We don't live in that country anymore where I'm the United States of America. I can say and do whatever I want, right? Like, how dare you? You don't know who I am. Those days are over. We do
Well,
not have the strength, and we're so divided internally
mhm,
that
and
just these basic Bill of Rights are
mhm,
somehow, well, yes, but don't say that. Yes, but
mhm.
you know, you can have this gun, but you can't have that gun. You can't. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, and
well,
here's
the
what I'll say.
police should
Yeah.
the police shouldn't be able to come into your house, but why do they want to? Maybe you've done something suspicious, and you should just let them in anyway, right? I mean,
And I
we're
would
walking on
say
this
to that,
line.
yeah, but to put it in practical, not in what should be, let's put it in practical terms that I think everyone who's listening could deal with. Within the confines of your space, your comfort level, you need to push that comfort level a little bit. So maybe you're someone who's relatively shy, or maybe you work in a work environment where you really do have those boundaries. Then in your off work environment with certain people with whom you're comfortable, have the conversation and push it a little bit if that's who you are. If you're somebody who is great in one-on-one interactions with people who are close to you, then have it with them. If you're someone who has got the big giant personality and you don't care, then drop the nuclear bomb and go for it, right? But everybody's got to find and whatever with whatever talents you have. By the way, some people have great oratorical skills, some people have great writing skills, some people are better one. Whatever that is, you got to find your voice and begin to push back. Because if everybody caves, because you notice how outrageous the other side is, they don't care what you think. And you have to get that in on your head too. Because if we keep letting them go, I guarantee you they will kill you, because that's their end game. You either think like we think, or I will kill you. And
That's true.
anyone who looks around the world at what happens with communism, if you're not afraid to use words now, you better be prepared to use swords later.
That's right. That's true. And that's not an extreme assertion. They
No,
want to kill you because we can see they killed people during COVID.
yeah,
They kill people in wars that are completely unnecessary.
uh,
They will absolutely kill you. They don't have any qualms about it.
yeah. And you have to recognize, when you see that crazy person screaming on TV or putting a gun to her neck and pretending like she's shooting Charlie Kirk, that's you she's shooting. And she means it. Now, you might say, and you'd be accurate, I think she's lost her mind and she's demonic, which she is. But nonetheless, that percentage of the population that's that crazy is not that big. That's the other thing we have to remember. But they get a lot of media coverage. So they're a lot louder and bigger than they seem. The
Yeah.
rest of us are way bigger than that, but we make a small footprint because we're too kind.
Yeah.
And we got to stop doing that. I'm not saying be mean and nasty, but you have to speak up and be firm
Yeah.
when it's appropriate. And I get it, in a job setting, that may not be the best place. I mean, you got to make your call in those places. But I think we all have spaces where we can push back and probably do more than we've been doing. And we need to do that where possible. So,
Yeah, you're right. That's why I'm grateful for you, Don.
yeah, wait. And I'm grateful that you're here. And I'm grateful that you all are here listening. It's so awesome. Hey, look, the bottom line is we still can do this. And there was a serious threat 2 years ago, 4 years ago, that we'd never be able to do this again. So we should thank God every day that we still live in the United States of America. We still have a constitutional republic. And as Benjamin Franklin said, as long as you can keep
As
it,
long as we can keep it. Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
keep it. So that said, girlfriend, we have like broken the record here. We probably should let these folks get on with their night. I can't believe it's 5 minutes after 7, but it is. So any closing thoughts from you, Leslie?
No, I mean, I was watching a video about again more California, destruction. You talked about how the people will kill you, and we just have it. It really is. I don't want to take it down on the final thought, but just thinking about homelessness and just the how rampant it's become. I don't know what it looks like other places in the country. I know that homelessness in California has skyrocketed, while statistically the rest of the country, it's like they tipped the country over and all the homeless people came down to California. and and we've just created these programs, I mean, with where we're handing out needles and alcohol and crack pipes, and then the other, included in that same package is a bottle of Narcan or Narcam, whatever that it's like,
No.
I'm going to give you something to kill you, and then I'm going to give something to bring you back, and then kill you and bring you back. It's like it's the ultimate torture, and it's heartbreaking. And I'm grateful that I have a family that's healthy, and that I'm healthy, and that we are intact, and we're watching over each other. And I am praying that we just we get we just pull together, and that we use our prayers to just completely heal and revitalize our country and our world, because we're all so broken. We have so many broken, limping people emotionally, physically, spiritually. And we just we don't recognize how powerful we can be if we combine in prayer and we focus on God will listen and he wants to do it. And we just need to ask for it.
Yeah, well, I maintain that we've been given a Nineveh moment. And just quickly remember the story of Nineveh when Jonah was given the task to go and tell the folks in Nineveh they need to straighten up and fly right.
Yeah.
And he decided, no, I'm not going there. Winds up in the belly of a whale, gets spit back on the water. I think you need to go, Jonah. All right, I'll go. So Jonah goes to Nineveh, convinced they were going to like ignore him, maybe even kill him. They decided to do the right thing and they prayed and God decided to spare them and they got to go on and flourish. So I think we have a Nineveh moment and it's really up to us which direction it's going to go. We're either going to do what the citizens of Nineveh did or we're going to do what the citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah did, which was
Yeah.
ignore it. Then they got like firebombed. So
Yep.
It is indeed, if it is to be, it's up to me sort of a thing, right? So, all right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, hey, sports fans, thank you all so much. God is good. Make America great again. And looking forward to seeing y'all next week. Be good, Leslie, and we'll see you then.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.